Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy first Monday after the longest tax season ever. I know I'm a little late. Things were happening. We moved the office upstairs, as you can see, and I forgot my little background, which I thought was okay, but I didn't realize, I haven't tested it out, so I didn't realize how far away from the wall we were, and that you could just, you see bags hanging, it's fine, right? So we're managing. So as always, I'm going to give everyone just a few minutes to jump in. Let me know how your weekend was. Let me know where you're watching from. And I'm going to just open one more window that I forgot to open. Okay, hold on. That should be off. Okay. I had this morning's just been kind of weird. This week is a little crazy, even though tax season's over. It's just, after tax season's over, there's always this kind of weird week where usually, where we have this, not even week, we have this period where we come down off the, tax season rush and we kind of get back to normal, and being that we are already, it's the middle of October, so we're jumping into tax planning season and year-end planning and all the things. We don't really have that. So it's just kind of weird. I know it's weird for everyone though, right? Just weird for everybody in different ways. Okay, I want to open this. When you're here, say hi. I'm really excited to get into today's topic, especially since I was late. I have a weird, a crazy day. I have this now. I have a call with one of my teammates at 9:30. I have an ADP call at 10. And then I'm in class all week, guys, from 11 to 3. And then with a question, a Q&A right after that for an hour. And we have my son's IEP meeting this afternoon. I have a very busy day. Very, very busy. So, okay, there's my home. All right, so let's get started. So last week, we're in the middle, we are on part 2 of our tax planning series. And last week we talked about who can benefit from tax planning. This week we're going to talk about basic tax planning. All right. And when I'm talking, you guys, basic tax planning this week and advanced tax planning next week, this is kind of, these are general ideas. These are kind of how we separate our different kinds of tax planning into basic and advanced, but not everybody's going to separate it like this. So just know that that's not necessarily how everyone's going to do it. That's how we do it. That's how a lot of firms do it. So let's jump right in. I think I have everything open now. All right. So let's start with what is it, right? What is basic tax planning? And I have a lot of people come at, tell me and talk to me. They're like, oh yeah, I get basic tax planning when I file my tax return. And that's not usually true. Now, some of your bigger firms or your boutique firms might include tax planning when you go there for a tax return, but you guys, it's not actually included with your tax return. What's included with your tax return is what's called a tax projection. So let's real quick talk about the difference there. So with a tax projection, that's based off last year's tax return. So let's use 2019, 2020, right? Since that's what we just finished up. So what that tells you, when you get your 2020 tax projection with your 2019 tax return, what that projection is telling you is that you as the taxpayer, this is what your 2020 income picture and your tax picture will be based on 2020 tax brackets and tax rules, and assuming that your 2020 tax picture looks exactly like 2019, okay? Same income, same withholding, same estimated tax payments, all the same stuff, just adjusting it for the tax brackets and maybe any new tax laws that might come into play. Okay, so that's what a tax projection is. And the purpose of a tax projection is to suggest to you any necessary estimated tax payments to ensure that at year end, you've paid in enough to satisfy your safe harbor tax payments and to avoid any underpayment penalties. All right, so tax projections are a very useful tool, but it's not tax planning. And I don't ever want you guys to think that those two things are the same. All right, because they're not. So we're going to talk about basic tax planning, okay? So the tax planning in its simplest form, the minimum return on investment you should be getting from a tax plan, okay? And I'm so sorry, I'm sitting on a ball because we haven't got a mat because we have, you see, we have hardwood floors downstairs. We had carpet, so I could have my rolling chair, and I can't roll it on this floor, so we have to order a mat. Anyway, so I'm really low, so, and probably bouncing a little bit. Sorry, hopefully I don't make you like sick. All right, so tax projection comes with your last year's tax return. Let's talk about tax planning. So basic tax planning. So again, what is the minimum you should get back as a taxpayer from sitting down with tax planning with a tax professional? Okay, so what is it? So basic tax planning is estimating what your year-end income and your year-end tax liability is going to be for the year before we actually finish the year. All right. Think about, you guys, when you do a tax return, right? It's retroactive, right? You're reviewing what's already happened. All right. So when we go to file your 2020 tax returns, right? 2020 has already happened. You've made all the money, you've spent all the money, anything you could do to save on taxes, you've already done. Your tax return is almost just like a reconciliation of all your taxable activity, okay? But coming in and doing some tax planning before the end of the tax year has a lot of advantages, okay? Excuse me. So again, so tax planning is different than your tax projection that we discussed because it's actually using your 20 figure. Okay, we talked about that tax projection says, okay, as long as 2020 is exactly like 2019 was, this is what your tax is going to be like. But I don't know about you, but even when I was a W-2 employee, we had differentiating bonuses. My husband was on sales, so he was on commission. So there's always some fluctuation, right? So by doing tax planning based on this year, right, we actually use your 2020 year-to-date W-2 wages, your tax withholding. We would use your 2020 business income and your business expenses. And what we actually do is we will work with you to complete an income projection for the rest of the 2020 tax year. All right. So if you came in November, we do tax planning and you have a business, we incorporate, well, what's the rest of your year going to look like? And we include that projection for the entire year to figure out when all is said and done, where is your actual income and your tax going to be? All right. So why is this? So it goes back to, it's tax time, jump forward to April 2021 and think forward to that. And raise your hand if you're excited for April to get here because you're excited to write a big check because you always owe money, or maybe you never know what's going to happen. So you love when April comes around because you're like, it's a gamble. What's going to happen? And nobody likes that. Okay. And part of the one of the worst parts of that is that you're 4 months down the road, you're writing a check for taxes from money that you earned 4 months before or longer than 4 months ago, right? So nobody likes that. So by engaging in some basic tax planning, you can get an idea of what your tax liability is going to be for the year. And then you can make a payment toward your taxes while you still have the cash. All right, that's big. That is so big, especially tax day is 4 days out, 4 months after the end of the year. Let's make all our money on the last day of the year, right? We made it, we make it usually, unless we're a seasonal business, we make it throughout the year, right? But when you have the money that's why it's so important to do some tax planning because then you can get an idea, okay, this is how much I'm going to owe. Well, great. I can pay that now because I have the money now. I'm not going to wait till April. I'm going to pay it while I have the cash. So I don't get into this hole in this cycle of being behind. All right, because that's something we have so many clients that new clients that we take on that are stuck in that cycle, always being behind, and we working to get out of that way harder than getting ahead of it. okay, and paying in now what we need, what we're going to owe for 2020. All right, by paying in your tax liability before year end, you also avoid unnecessary penalties and interest. Who wants to pay unnecessary penalties and interest, right? Save your money. And excuse me, the biggest reason to you guys, or I think you'll have your own opinions, but the reason I like to do tax planning before the end of the year is because you remove the number one reason that most of you procrastinate on filing your taxes next year, and that's the uncertainty. All right, you come in for tax planning at the end of 2020, whether it's November or December, we get your tax planning in order, you pay in your whatever tax liability is left over, and then when April comes around, you're like, yeah, take my taxes, Bree. Like, I'm not gonna owe money. I'm good. Get it done. Let's go. All right. So it doesn't give you that gut-wrenching feeling of, we have to do taxes and we are gonna owe money because we always owe money, and then you just keep putting it off, right? So get rid of that. Get rid of that uncertainty. And then you guys, finally, it gives us a clear picture, like I said, of your income and your tax for the year. And what that allows us to do is it allows you to maximize any deductions and credits that you may not already be using. And if not, it gives you, let me start over. That didn't make sense. So by looking at it in November and December, right? By looking at your tax picture, by looking at your income picture, we can sit down and we can say, okay, this is what you're looking at, but hey, you're not taking these deductions. Hey, you don't have these expenses, these credits yet, and it allows you to maximize those potential deductions and credits before year end. Because with a few exceptions, after the year closes, you're very limited on what you can do to minimize your taxes. Okay, so by doing it before the end of the year, you can work and see if there's any other possible tax saving strategies that we can implement. All right, and by knowing, and this happens by doing just two simple things, right? Knowing what your tax liability is going to be for the year. Okay, and then knowing what your post-tax payment cash flow is. So you have this money sitting in your bank account, right? And you work with us and we say, okay, this is going to be your tax payment, so let's make that. And then you're like, oh, wow, okay, I still have this much money left. All right, so by knowing what your tax liability is and what your post-tax payment cash flow is for the year, you now have options. Okay, you now know if you need to be cash conservative for the rest of the year or if you have extra cash to spend. And either way, you now have a solid idea of how much cash you do or don't have. All right, because so many of us, we look at our cash, we're like, oh my God, look at all this money. And then we realize come tax time that 90% of that money has to go toward our taxes. All right, so we don't like that uncertainty. We don't want that to happen. All right, so the final thing this does, I think I said final already, but it's one more thing, is that basic tax planning gives you a starting point if you want to engage and implement more advanced tax planning strategies, all right? So like I said, by knowing what your tax liability is, right, and then knowing what your post-tax payment cash flow is, basically knowing how much cash you have to play with, right? We can start getting creative with that. All right, and we'll talk about that next week. Next week, we'll talk about those advanced tax saving strategies. But some examples, if you have extra cash and then okay, I can purchase that big piece of equipment that I've really been wanting to buy all year, but I just wasn't sure if I'd have the money after taxes were due, right? You don't have to wait till April to do it. You can do it now because you know how much taxes you're paying because you're paying them now. So you know that you have this chunk of cash left. So you know that, yes, I have the money to buy that big piece of machinery. Plus, you're buying it and you're actually going to lower your taxes even more. But that's not a reason to spend money, you guys. And that's a whole nother thing. But if you have the cash, it gives you choices. If you have extra cash, it's also going to allow you to max out your retirement contributions for the year, right? Which will, again, lower your tax liability. So it gives you some flexibility there, all right, to figure out if there's a next step, if there's some advanced tax saving strategies to work with, okay? So that's it. So basic tax planning, you guys, the benefits are to pay in your taxes now so you're not surprised next year, to pay them in now because now is when you have the cash from when you made the money, right? You minimize penalties and interest by paying it now rather than April. And again, by knowing how much tax you owe and by actually paying it now, you see what kind of cash flow you have left over, and then you can start getting creative on how to spend that or save it, but what to do with that money. All right, so I don't see any questions, so that's awesome. But next week, you guys, we're gonna take it a step further. We're gonna start talking about some of those common advanced tax planning strategies that we have, that if you have that cash available, what can we do with that cash to minimize your taxes even more? All right, so few ending announcements like I always have, right? Guys, for the first time in 9.5 months, I don't have an end announcement about 2019 taxes. Yay, they're done. So you guys, right now we are ramping up for 2020 tax planning, if you couldn't tell, right? So that begins in November. So if that's something that interests you or you want more information about, definitely make sure you're on our email list. The details for our tax planning packages actually went out last week, and I think we're going to release prices in this week's newsletter. So definitely make sure you're on our email list so that you're the first to know about the tax planning packages available to you guys. And a reminder to all my PPP and EIDL borrowers out there, don't forget, there's a few options that we have available to help you guys. We have our personalized PPP strategy sessions for those of you out there that are doing it yourself and just need a little guidance, maybe an extra set of eyes looking at your application before you submit it. And then for those of you that aren't DIYers or more of I want somebody to do everything for me, we got you there too. We can do your whole loan forgiveness process for you. So go ahead and reach out to me. I'll put it in the comments to schedule a consult if either of those two things interest you guys. And then biggest thing, next week's training is not going to be on Monday, right? It will be on Tuesday, still 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, but next Tuesday, I don't know, the 27th maybe? So that's going to be part 3 of our tax planning series. Like I said, we're going to talk about advanced tax planning. And I can't promise anything, but hopefully my backdrop will be up and we'll look more cohesive next week. But thank you guys for joining me this week. If you have questions, please go over to Money, Tax, and Finance for Small Business Owners Facebook group, if that's not where you're watching it, and ask your questions there. It's a great place to ask questions about, taxes, accounting, finance, small business, all the things. And even if I can't get to it right away, there's a lot of people in there that have been listening to me long enough that can help you and guide you in the right direction. All right, until next, I will see you guys. I'll see you guys Thursday. Thursday is our updates and Q&A session. So I will see you guys Thursday, also at a different time, but I don't remember what time right now because I am in a conference that day. I think it's in the morning. So I'll look. Just keep an eye on in the group, and it'll be there. All right, bye, you guys. Have a fantastic week.